In this video, we are continuing on looking at select statements and running queries in MySQL. And we are going to, in this case, look at the clause group by. So the general format here is select a number of columns. You can use an aggregate function, which we talked about in a previous video, and we'll go into that in the second half of this video, how you use an aggregate function with a group by. We have to specify which table we're using. We can use a where clause. We'll get into that, I think, in the second video. We're going to have more than one video on the group by, and then group by columns. In this case, we are going to be using the grades database that we demonstrated in the previous video. So just a reminder, that database has 4 different tables in it. And in this case, we are going to be using the student names portion of that database exclusively. So recall that we have 4 students in the course, all with the last name Bob. And then we have some different first names, and we have a shared middle name between the mom and one of the sons. Okay, so a basic group by statement is we're going to select the last name from students, and we're going to group by last name. So what that's going to do is go through, bring up back the students database, it's going to go through the last name column, and it's going to form up groups, and the groups are going to be groups of things that have the same last name. Well, in this particular case, they all have the same last name, so we should get one group out of this. And if I've already run this, and if I look at the first group from this, we get a group with one name in it, Bob. So that's not terribly interesting. A little more interesting might be to group by middle name. So if we group by middle name, then we should have, again, 3 different groups. We have an Eli, a Leslie, and a Jebediah. Okay, so if we go over here, we see exactly that we have Eli, Jebediah, and Leslie. Notice that the order may not quite be what you would expect. You might expect to see Eli, Leslie, Jebediah. Don't count on the order of things coming out here unless you specifically specify an order. All right, the last thing I'm going to do here is show you something not to do. I mean, I suppose you could contrive a reason why you might want to do this, but in general, this is a bad idea. And the bad idea is I have chosen to display the last name first name, but I am grouping by the middle name. So the output of this is Jim Bob, Robert Bob, and Jane Bob. So how did it come up with that? Well, if we go through and look at the groups, sure enough, Jim Bob is a representative for middle name Eli, and Robert Bob is a representative for middle name Jebediah. But how did we get Jane Bob as a representative for middle name Leslie? Why not Fred Bob? Well, when you do something like this, MySQL is going to say, okay, you want a last name and a first name for the group middle name? Fine, I'll do that. I'm just going to give you the first one I come across. That's probably not useful, and to make it even less useful, you can't guarantee which the first one is going to come across is even going to be, because it can be random. So the idea here is whatever you're going to use in your group by should be the same thing as you're doing in the select up here. Doesn't have to be, but probably should be. Okay, now we're going to go a little bit further into group by, and we're going to look at grouping with aggregates, or at least an introduction to grouping with aggregates. Okay, so in this part, we are going to look at using aggregate functions with the group by clause. And in this portion, we're going to continue using the same column here as the column here. No more of this last name, first name, and the select and middle name in the group by. That just didn't work very well. I'll give myself a little more space. So here we're looking at selecting a middle name, and we're going to group by middle name. So it's going to give us those 3 groups, and I guess I'm sort of giving away the answer down here. This count then is an aggregate function. So this is going back to the general form of the select group by, select columns, and then an aggregate function. So in this case, We are going to aggregate by the count, and we're counting everything in the group. So this means count all the stuff in the group. And so there's one middle name Eli, one middle name Jebediah, and two middle names of Leslie. You can sort this if you want. So this is basically the same command as the one I just showed you. The difference here is that I said, can we put this in descending order? So we get the count first, highest count first. And you can group by more than just one column. I mean, the general form shows you can have as many columns as you want. So in this case, I'm going to have more than one column I'm going to group by. I'm going to group by middle name and first name. And you may notice something about this if you've been paying attention to the data. This turns out to not be terribly useful because what happens? Well, when you look at middle name and first name, it turns out that's a unique identifier for every student in the class. So we get Jim Eli, Robert Jebediah, Jane Leslie, and Fred Leslie. So those two are different. Even though they have the same middle name, when you combine the first name and the middle name together, you suddenly get one group for each one. So you can specify too many columns in some sense. And then on the other hand, if we go ahead and say, well, then show me the middle name with the last name, it turns out that you get the same groups that you had before because everybody has the last name Bob. We have Eli Bob, there's one of those. We have a Jebediah Bob, there's one of those. And then we have a Leslie Bob, and there's two of those, Jane and Fred, right? Okay, so that is a basics of grouping. Grouping, again, just takes your data and makes groups of them depending on the columns that you specify. And there's one more thing I want to show you, and that is there's a little star up here on this. Why is there a star? Well, it turns out I had to make a quick edit to the script, and when I edited the script, I didn't save it. So if you save, well, I just ran it again. If you save it, not run it, if you save it, the star goes by. So the star just means, hey, you haven't saved this yet. All right.